It's like a baby's toy.
I'm totally Batman.
Oh, man.
Shh. Communing with the earth spirits.
Welcome to California, bud.
Cowabunga.
And after that, I just sort of space out for about an hour.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Secondary Heroes podcast. This week, we're talking about remakes. Is it too much? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is that all Hollywood can come up with? Well, let's find out. This show's Trevor, and joining me as usual is...
Hey guys, this is Prague.
We need to remake that hat on you, Trevor. This is Alexander Wolfgang.
Ouch, I agree.
Best of both worlds, man.
Oh my
Looked really nice with the W on that hat.
This
Winners.
is for the people who are watching on YouTube, but Trevor
That's right.
is wearing a Lakers colors LA Dodgers hat. So, yeah. Obviously.
What else do you need?
Hey, you
Anyways.
know what? You're from there. That's I can't be
We'll allow
mad at
it,
you.
fine.
Yes, I can't be too mad at you. You're from there. Whatever. Like the people who aren't even associated, that's silly. Anyways,
That is
whatever.
silly. I
Today,
agree.
we're talking remakes, people. And
We are talking remakes. We are the secondary heroes. We're not even the first hero, so we must be a remake of somebody else, right?
how many different podcasts are there? Because
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all
speaking of remakes.
3 dudes.
Anyways, we are talking about remakes today because Hollywood is pumping them out like crazy, and there's a whole bunch in the pipeline. So, what better time to talk about it?
That's funny that you say Hollywood's pumping them out right now. Hollywood's been pumping remakes out since the 50s. I
Yep.
mean, remakes have always been a thing. And Trevor, you say it all the time that, I mean, there's only 7 stories.
Right. It's
What-
back to Greek
please
antiquity. Yeah, no, based on like when Homer was telling original stories like the Odyssey, it's been pretty much the same stories. You have either overcoming the monster, rags to riches, the quest, voyage and return, rebirth, comedy, or tragedy. And you could pretty much classify every single movie into that 7 categories. Like, there's nuances to that. Like, oh, well, what about this one that combines 2? Okay.
It's still 2
but
of the 7.
It's still 2 of the 7. Like, you're still drilling
Yeah.
down to the core concepts of storytelling. Like, there's people who will argue that there's only 3 types of stories. And then there's people who will argue that there's actually 36 types of stories. But think how many movies come out per year.
Hey, and
Every story has been told ad nauseum at this point.
some people say there's 32 flavors, but you don't taste them all. I know, bad joke. I'm trying here. I'm real
I like
tired.
it. That's okay.
Well, cool. This
We
is pretty fascinating because Prague, you said it off the top. Remakes are being pumped out. Yeah, they've always been pumped out, but I think the difference is now remakes are getting better. The remakes are surpassing the original.
They can. Not all of them.
Not all of them.
Right.
It's a matter of perspective.
And
for
it,
sure.
it's also a matter of like what IPs do need remakes, which ones don't. Is there a time contingency to how often? Like, if a movie came out in the 50s, does it make sense? Oh, now we can do a remake. If it just came out 5 years ago, is that too soon? And I mean, there's no cut and fast rules to it, but I think that it's just that idea of original ideas, how it's a delicate balance, because if you make a book into a movie, is that an original idea? No, the book was the original idea. So that's already an adapted screenplay to begin with. And how original does a movie have to be for it to get that original, oh, this is an original?
Right.
When you boil it down to it, the people who are making movies were inspired by other movies.
Always.
Any director now
Always
is inspired.
inspired.
Oh, I grew up watching these movies, and there's homages to this director's style or this writer's style in everything that's made.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't really make something from nothing, really. Like when you think about it, it's more philosophical. We won't get into that. But you can only build off of what you already know. So yeah, of course it's going to be, you know, a remake. Everything's going to be remade and reshaped into new forms. But I think so. Little backstory on me: I've always kind of hated the idea of remakes for many years. Even going through film school, I'm like, I want to see new original content. I'm sick of seeing the same story being told. Um, but I think within the last 10 years, I've really come around to the idea that remakes aren't so bad. I think a lot of it was you, Trevor, pointing out that there's already been so many stories that can't be told; they're just being retold. And I have seen some remakes that I enjoy either as much or more than the original. So I think I'm starting to come around it. I don't think everything should be like the direct remake, like same title, same everything all the time. But I think
Disney.
with the bare bones of a story. Oh yeah, Disney's a great example, right? They're just straight up remaking almost
Shot
word
for
word,
shot.
for shot their animated movies, which is a whole different thing. But obviously, if you have a story, I think what kind of tickled my brain a bit today was thinking about foreign adaptations. So you have a foreign film that a lot of people probably won't see because they don't want to read subtitles. Alex. So I
Oh,
think it's
come on.
beneficial to remake that in Hollywood for American audiences. I wish that people would see the original films as intended, but sometimes it's worth it if it's a good enough story to translate it in a different way, different medium, whatever, that's more accessible to more people. And the one thing that I'm going to say that might be controversial for some of our listeners is I wouldn't have said this probably a year or two ago, but I would want to see a remake of Dark, which I think is one of the best stories. And I don't think enough American audiences watched it, even though it's one of the most watched Netflix shows that's mostly overseas. So that took a lot for me to say, because I didn't want to have to admit that. But I really want Alex to watch that show, and I don't think he will.
Oh, I see why you want. Okay, now I understand. And you know what? I'm gonna jump on this too because for years I've been a purist with Back to the Future, and as I've gotten older, I'm kind of like I don't care if they were to make a remake tomorrow. I mean, probably in the last 5 years, I probably would have been like, "Oh, I'm boycotting this. I'm not gonna see it." I would have still seen it, just I wouldn't have talked about it. But I don't know. I'm now at this point where I don't think I care. I think just do it. I think I like whenever, for instance, the Cobra Kai. What Cobra Kai did with Karate Kid. It took the old story and just made it fun. It made something fun out of a dumb 80s movie. And not saying that Back to the Future is a dumb 80s movie. It's a perfect movie. It's a perfect movie. But if they gave it that treatment, then I would be okay with it.
Right.
But at the same time, remake it. I don't care. Just do it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, you get to
but I also think it's where it's coming from. Like, if it's a movie that's like all kind of set in the real world and stuff, and you update it for modern times, that's different. Like, say they made it in the 70s and it was time appropriate for the 70s. Rather than making it as an homage to 70s, what if that idea was set in 2020? That's a neat idea. But like a sci-fi fantasy thing, those things could be updated with today's standards because like people complained, "Oh, Force Awakens is just remaking A New Hope." It is. And have you seen how much better it looks to blow up ships and fly around space than it does from 1977? It has changed considerably to depict those types of things.
It really has, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like a good example that you guys probably won't agree with because you didn't like the movie would be Dune. Like Dune, the original was pretty terrible.
They already remade it.
Now, no, I'm saying that's what I'm talking about. You guys didn't like the movie, but in the new movie, as slow and boring as it was for you guys, like it looked great. Like it visually looked better than the original. Like you're right, Trevor. The sci-fi movies, I think, are the ones that might most benefit from that. Like you look at the old like Star Trek TV shows and stuff, and the flimsy doors and the cheap sets, which is fun because I like those kind of things, like the cheap B movie type stuff. But those are ones that are easy to like remake and give a bunch of money to, and great CGI work and stuff. So yeah,
Another
I think
thing
that's a
that's
good case.
changed is also sound editing. I know that always flies under the radar, but there's movies in the 80s where I can't hear the dialogue at all because they didn't mix it properly. So like all the explosions and any kind of background noise kind of overpowers the audio. That perfect example is Blade Runner. Blade Runner was relatively cutting edge for 1982, but I don't know half the words that were said in that film. But Blade Runner 2049 takes the idea and it looks absolutely amazing, and I can hear all the lines perfectly. And it's not just a remake, it kind of takes the story to a new direction while still building upon what was already there.
There you go. So we're kind of making a case already for remakes here. So I think before we go too far, we should talk about socials.
You're absolutely right. So let's remake this social. And before I get into the socials, I do want to give a shout out to our friends over at the Movie Retakes podcast, because they do have a good podcast all about retaking and remaking movies.
It's fun.
Their last episode was all about Super Mario Brothers. They had a 1993 Super Mario Brothers, and we just got a remake that was far superior. So yeah, check them out. They're super fun. Actually, I got to give a big shout out Chris Soley. He's the one who helped us start our podcast. So yeah, please check out Movie Retakes podcast. But our turn. Check us out over on crossthestreamsmedia.com. You can leave us a voicemail, a review. You can find all of our episodes over there. You can find all the links to all of our YouTube episodes as well. If you don't want to do that, you can go to all of our social medias at Secondary Heroes. And no space, no underscore, just Secondary Heroes, baby. Go over to Apple Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating, because it's definitely helpful to get more ears on us. It's how we get this podcast growing. Check out our YouTube page, like, subscribe, leave a comment. We want to know what you guys think. What do you guys think about all of these retakes that are going on? Are you agreeing with what we have to say about how, hey, retakes, remakes, let's have them. But just remember, it's all free. For sure. That was reverse. This is all free for you and priceless to us.
That was well done.
I stumbled a little bit around the end.
No, I enjoyed that. You tied that in nicely to the whole remake thing. We wound the tape. We're going back to the
I
beginning.
didn't even think of it like that. And
again.
thank you for. Oh, now you make me seem smarter. But
that's what I'm here for. Yeah, you're welcome. So before we did this, I've been talking about this topic for a while. I've been wanting to do this topic for a while because it's something that I find interesting. And as I mentioned earlier, I hated the concept. But a movie that really changed my opinion on remakes was the remake of Let Me In, or Let the Right One In, called Let Me In. So I had not watched the original
movie, right? Sorry.
It's a vampire movie, and I had not watched the original. I'd only watched the remake, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. And maybe I never would have watched the original, but I went back to watch the original, and I actually enjoyed the original just as much. And they are tonally fairly different. I don't know how, I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's they feel like two sides of the same coin. It works really well. So I'm like, well, if I can enjoy both of these movies, and I think what made the remake work so well is that they added a new character which ratcheted up the tension. So you have the original, which was more slow building dread, and the second one, which was more tense. So you had the same story but told in a different way. That's fascinating to me. Like, I actually enjoyed that. So if movies can do that in a retake, I'm all for it. But I'm not for these Disney remakes where they're literally shot for shot. Same thing with the Psycho remake, like 20 years ago, whenever that was. They did that. It was literally, that was the hype around it. Was that, it's a shot for shot remake, but it's in color. And yeah,
and
I didn't care for that at all.
Vince Vaughn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to take Vince Vaughn as that type of character after you just watch Swingers.
Right? But yeah, when I saw that movie, those two movies, I'm like, you know what? Maybe there is a case for this. And yeah, I'm okay with some remakes if they're done well and done right, and they put the right twist on it or something, or make it their own. It's
I
a good
think
story. Stick with it.
any remake though is based on just making money first and foremost. But beyond that,
Always. Yeah.
everything that is done in creative is based on making money. But once you get past that, it's about expanding the audience. For an international film that people may have never seen or never even heard of, to remake that for a different audience, that expands the audience. For the Disney remakes, even if it is shot for shot, it's not really made for the people who watch the animated movie, because they'll go and see it regardless. But it's expanding the audience who, oh, well, why don't you just watch the animated classic? Well, a letterbox animated film just it doesn't hit the same. Like, I have the VHS tapes of those. It means nostalgia for me, but it's cool to see it completely depicted differently. As, like, I'm not a big fan of how certain things look when they become live action, but it's for a different style and a different taste and a different time. So
can
it's
agree
not,
with that.
it's just expanding the audience. Like, oh, I hate that they did this to the movie that I love. Well, the movie that you love still exists.
Right.
It's not impacted whatsoever. You can watch that a million times. They're streaming on Disney Plus. You can have it on loop the rest of your life. That doesn't impact the existence of the new film.
No, I agree.
Well, and,
No, go ahead, Alex.
Trevor, both of us, we're both huge Turtles fans. How many times have they remade Turtles?
A million times.
Exactly,
I don't even
but
know
they'll
which
never take
version
away the
they're on.
names.
Yeah.
That-
I don't know which version they're on. Like, the new one that's coming out with Seth Rogen, it's like rebooting the same origin story. They're still teenagers. It's not like, oh, now we're checking in when 30 years later.
yeah, now they're doing their taxes.
Yes.
But no, but you're absolutely right. They can remake the Turtles as many times as they want, but you're not taking away that 90s movie that feels so nostalgic and fun. You're just expanding the universe. And I mean, and that's another way of looking at these remakes. If you really want to, look at what Marvel's doing with the whole multiverse. Just imagine this remake is just in a different universe. There.
Yeah,
Maybe that'll help you.
for sure. But now I really want the Midlife Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh God, say it with
would
me,
be-
man.
Midlife
would be fire.
Mutant Ninja Turtles. be great,
Raphael's
man.
married and has a dead end job, and
Oh yeah.
Leonardo's
I
a
can
CEO
watch that.
of a company.
Anyways, I like that idea. I like that concept of the multiverse too, because that you know Disney and Marvel are going to use that at some point pretty soon. It's like, could we do Iron Man now? Just call it a different universe, different actor.
Oh wow.
I think they are going to do that.
That's the thing. It's
soon.
like that's the weird part. Is like you can't say it's too soon because that was 20 plus years ago now.
Or
yeah.
not
Wow.
yet. No, it came
Is it
out in
not yet?
2008.
Okay. good.
Okay.
It's only 15.
Wait,
Still.
Iron Man?
Yeah.
I don't know when it came out. So you're probably right.
2008.
I'm bad with
I
dates.
don't know why I thought it was older than that. I thought it was 20 years old.
Nope.
Oh,
But-
whoops. Well,
Regardless,
ignore what I have to say.
No, even Marvel itself, I mean, they're remaking comic book stories. It's not like they're coming up with brand new superhero storylines. These storylines exist. They're piecing
Right,
together
they're
multiple different
adaptations.
things, but they're adaptations to begin with. It's not original.
Well, I think a lot of times too with these characters, like Iron Man, they keep saying Robert Downey Jr. was perfectly cast, and I agree. As Iron Man, you can never recast him. It's like these are characters, like you can recast them. I understand he was great in the role, and a lot of these people are great in their roles, but you can recast them. A great example of this, and this is going to be a movie that none of you have heard of, so I'm just going to talk about it anyways. But a movie called Life During Wartime is technically like a sequel to a movie called Happiness. And what they did was they recast the entire cast. It was made only a few years after the first one, but they took all the same characters and gave them an entirely different cast. So it had a whole different feel, but the same characters. And it was a trip, but it was just as awesome as the original film. So I think you can do that. I think your characters, if they're well written enough, can be, played by somebody else if it's the right actor. Like most recently, Wednesday Addams. Everyone's like, Christina Ricci is definitely Wednesday. She's been Wednesday for so long, you can't replace her. And then look who comes along and steals the show. So you have Jenna Ortega, who absolutely blew up on the screen, is super popular. Yeah, you can do it.
And to expand on that, I mean, look at It, the Stephen King's
Same
It.
thing. Yeah,
Same
thing happened before that came out. Yeah.
Yep. I always thought Tim Curry was going to be the only It, and then you see Skarsgård do his thing. It's other people can expand on these characters.
Yeah, I guess don't hate the remake.
It's better of how the characters, like what character you're working with or what story you're working with. The more depth to the character's story, the easier it is to make a remake. If a remake comes out bad, maybe it's the actual original source material isn't that great.
Definitely could be.
Well,
yeah, definitely could be.
It's hard to say because look at Jurassic World. Jurassic Park is a perfect movie. Yeah. In my eyes,
that's a perfect movie.
Yeah,
that I'll agree with you on.
And Jurassic World, not so much. That's practically.
That's not really a remake, though. Not really.
It kind of is. They go to a park and all chaos breaks loose and the dinosaurs escape. I mean, it's the same exact story.
I get you. It's the same story.
Yeah.
I'm talking about something that isn't necessarily a sequel.
Okay, so you're saying just like a straight up like remake, like we're not acknowledging that this other movie ever happened, type of thing.
Sure. Right.
Okay. That's hard to.
So it'd be like Back to the Future if they redid that.
No, they're all remakes. Jurassic World is a Jurassic Park remake.
There you go.
I look at it like a remake. It has to be, man.
It's like a soft remake. Well, instead of like a soft reboot, it's like a soft remake.
It's like a soft remake. Okay, there we go. A soft remake.
There it is. Coined here. Trademarked today. I'm going online right now. Trademarking it. I can use
the new trend. Soft remakes.
The new trend coming out. Like, what the heck? So there is the other thing. The kind of bane of my existence is Wizard of Oz, which gets remake 3 times a year by different companies in various formats. Yeah. Like that's almost like it's too much. Like there's some things are just like, oh, okay, it's too much. Like that's me. Maybe not. I don't know. Makes money.
I'm just trying to think of one though. Like what would be one? Like
one what? One
like what is considered like a Wizard of Oz remake?
Oh,
or are you talking like
so many times? What are you talking about? They've done Oz, The Great Man of Oz, The Tin Man from Oz. That's all the same story. It's all Wizard of Oz. It's the original Wizard of Oz story, redone over and over again. They did that with what was it? Disney did at least 3 or 4 of them, I think, within the last decade.
With James Franco.
Right, everything. They've done so many different versions of them. TV show, made for TV movies. They're forgettable. That's probably why you don't know they came out. They probably came out and went straight to, whatever, the trash bin.
Wicked is coming out.
No one talked about it. And there's Wicked, so you go.
That's a perfect example, though.
And that Wicked is an inspired by story where it's not remade.
Right.
But Wizard of Oz is a great example of the original source material being far superior than anything else that they can come up with. Like there's no way you can remake it to make it any better. And that's where I think certain movies would fall in that category of Jurassic Park, Back to the Future. You can't remake those and it's going to be you're not going to surpass the original. But there are
we say that, but I bet you your kid is going to grow up and think that, maybe someone makes the Jurassic Park in like 20 years from now.
Well,
or 30 years from now. And she goes to see it and she's like, this is so much better than those stupid animatronics I saw that my dad made me watch.
If I showed my 10-year-old nephew Jurassic World compared to Jurassic Park, he's most likely going to like Jurassic World because it's a lot more action packed. It's a lot more on the edge of your seat. It's
sadly, yes.
That's the world that we're living in. And I think you said it at the beginning of the podcast, Trevor, that a lot of these remakes aren't made for us. It's made for a new audience. Yeah. It's to expand the audience.
Grr.
Oh, right.
I just want to yell at the cloud and suck on my Werther's originals and complain about everything.
But there's a lot of remakes out there that have far surpassed their predecessor.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I'm thinking more of the point that you brought up of if the source material is so good that it's tough to remake it. Like Wizard of Oz, the original movie is probably played more than any movie ever. just in the history of time, just because it's on like every Thanksgiving on TBS or whatever. They've been replaying it since the movie came out.
Since it came out,
I think
right.
more people have seen Wizard of Oz than maybe any movie ever. But it has that transition from black and white to Technicolor. You can't replicate that today. It's not like, oh, hey, it's in 1080 and now it's switched to 4K. Oh,
Yeah, it'd be really weird.
cool. Oh, man, geez, look at that transit. Like, there's just some things that, like, movies that became icons, it's really tough to remake icons. Like, you can do it, but I think it will always pale in comparison.
So the one movie that came to mind that when you were saying going from black and white to Technicolor, the one movie for me was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where if you're watching Miles Morales at the beginning, he's in 30 frames per second, but as he progresses and becomes a Spider-Man and better at being Spider-Man, he goes to 60 frames per second. Very subtle. You probably, if you're just an everyday watcher, you would never notice that, but it's something that's kind of it's got that idea.
Kind of same idea, sure.
It's got the idea, and like, it is cool that there are people trying to mimic that type of like black and white to color type of thing. And I love that there are people trying. They're not succeeding, but not a lot of them are succeeding. But I mean, that Spider-Verse has to be one of the ones on the top of my head that is working.
I like it. It's a good example.
I mean, it's also just the evolution of our style as creators. Think of the tools that people have to work with now. Like we mentioned just what George Lucas had to use to make Star Wars versus what J.J. Abrams gets to use. He has a different tool set. It's as simple as that. But also animation style. Like Into the Spider-Verse, what they're capable of as animation style. Back in when Walt Disney's overseeing Snow White, the guy's hand drawing each single dwarf frame by frame, and they have to photocopy it and then splice them together. It's a way different animation process. Have you seen the trailer for the new Disney movie, Disney Wish, where that animation style is one of the most gorgeous animation styles ever in the history of time? But Disney's been building up to this point. Like if you know the little short Paper Man that Disney released back in like 2010, it was like a 7-minute like demo of what our future is going to be. Well, now they finally have that full animated movie of that style, but it's just the evolutionary process of creative style that's what lends itself to wanting to remake something. Like if you're a creative force, oh, I could do this so much differently because of the tools that I have today. Like there still has to be some kind of inspiration from the creator to want to do this and have it come out good. Like you can come out and be like, oh, this is a total crash grab, I'm just going to make this and write my check, I'm done. But you can see that the remakes that come out good, people are really inspired by the original artwork, and like I can do stuff that they weren't capable of doing back then.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a
point.
It's a tonality, like it's an interest of the person, because it goes back to my idea of the stories that people are telling today are still inspired by what they grew up doing. That's why every future generation, like the people who are going to make movies in 20 to 30 years are watching the movies that are coming out right now. Like you're going to go back and watch the original Star Wars, but it's not the same as going to the theater opening night of some of the movies that are coming out now that are going to inspire you.
Well, all the movies in 30 years are going to be 2 minutes long and in vertical frame. So,
and made by AI.
And made by AI.
Mm-hmm.
No, I just Frog's tweeting about that a bunch, so I had to throw that in there.
Oh, you people will love it. That's fine. You know, I'm not going to yell at the cloud. This is what the future wants. This is what they'll get.
Hey, man, AI is changing everything, brother.
It is
Changing everything.
Hopefully, there'll be a bullet in my head before it all happens.
Oh my God! Oh my God, Prague!
So is that too bleak for the show?
That was way too bleak. Should I edit that?
I don't know. I don't know. Prague, there's that one time he said that he wanted to go back in time and push his younger self off a cliff just to see what happened.
Oh my God!
I'll never forget that one.
Prague.
Let's find out.
Come on, man.
I was watching a lot of Dark back then, so that was where that probably came from.
Oh my! And you're saying
Would I just bounce? Like I wouldn't be able to die? Would I just go,
you're talking to the most happy-go-lucky guy over here, and you want me to watch this dark show that now I'm gonna start talking about putting bullets in my head? I don't know if I want to do that.
It's not dark tonality. It's not like there's different degrees of dark.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you know what? It's good that we're back on the trail of having dark a part of every episode. It's been a while.
See? Where's your bingo cards, everybody? Pull them out. Wizard of Oz and Dark in one episode. You are welcome.
Two-trick pony over here, man. Two-trick pony.
You know how it is. Anyway. Oh, speaking, well, not Wizard of Oz, but the remake that's coming out that I saw today that I almost forgot about because I think they mentioned it like 2 years ago was Wonka with Timothy Chalamet.
Chalamet.
And I'm pretty sure we just got, what, 2 more? We got the one, there was one after Tim Burton's, I thought, but I might be making that up in my head. Because we had Tim Burton's remake. But I thought there was another one. Maybe there wasn't. Like, do we really need yet another one? But I guess we do. I don't know.
Again.
Maybe it's not for me.
I feel like we've kind of have said it, and I don't know what else we can say, but this stuff is made for a different generation now.
But do you think this generation will like it? Like, I don't know too many people that really liked Tim Burton's Wonka. Like, there might be some fringe people, but it's not like you hear a lot of people talking about that movie.
Right, but this Timothy
loving it or
Chalamet
whatever.
one is going to come out, and then all of a sudden people are going to say, okay, well, let's watch. Like, nobody's going to bring up Burton's. They're going to bring up
The
Gene
original,
Wilde.
for sure.
At least our generation, the parents that are showing the Timothy Chalamet version, they're like, I'm going to say, we're going to watch Gene Wilder as Wonka. And that's
right.
So, and that's the cool thing about these remakes. And Prague, you pretty much said it perfectly when you were like, I watched this movie. It's a remake of this movie. I then went back to watch the remake that I've never seen before. And I enjoyed that too. So how many people are then going to be like, I like this remake, and I hear that there's something out there. I want more of this.
That's a good point.
Go back
I
and
like
see
that.
it.
I like that.
So
Okay.
I like that you kind of brought that up, that now people may end up finding the joy in the 80s, 90s, and whatever in the movies that we all fell in love with.
Right.
You know, that maybe that's all it takes. Because, okay, so a lot of these movies that I'm thinking of, like, for instance, The Fly, The Thing, all those movies from the 80s, those are all remakes from other movies from the 50s. I mean, I don't know if I could do it, but go back and watch the old 50s versions of The Fly. Or
I have. It's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's really terrible.
And that's one of those movies that is an example of this movie far surpasses the original source material.
And I think it also helped that Cronenberg is very, very hyper stylistic. You know, it's not like he was just like a, for hire, studio call that said, "Hey, come in and make this cash grab." No, he was a visionary filmmaker who went all in and created groundbreaking effects and stuff for those films that people reference all the time. That's what. Like when that happens, I'm okay with the remakes. Like that's what I like. Like if you're gonna take the story I liked and make it better, go big, dude. I would love to see that. If someone had a genuinely good one, do it.
Because it's the stories you like. Like I don't think I'll ever have a problem of seeing more of a story that I like. It hit me like in the face with The Lion King, where The Lion King is shot by shot. I don't particularly like the character design, but that story is so impactful to me that it doesn't really I don't complain about seeing that story again in a new light. I never will. And so if they want to recreate my favorite stories, I just don't think it's the worst problem.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Your favorite story is Hamlet?
That's the recreating of a story too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, isn't Lion King supposed to be a retelling of Hamlet? Okay.
Yeah, so
it's a more accessible version. There's
it is a more accessible. Sure.
Yes. Okay. There we go. See, again, the remake is opening people's brains to.
It opens people to a new audience. But if you then go back to the original source material, as a creator, maybe an aged creator, it's cool to see your work being appreciated by a new audience that's only brought to light because the new version came out.
That's cool.
That's true. That's true.
That's cool. Yeah.
Fair point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Didn't think about that.
Because I don't think of watching Willy Wonka, but I do love Willy Wonka, and it will probably inspire me to rewatch it just because the new version's coming out.
Right. Essentially, I like the power of the story. Like, if you like the story enough that the remake, it really wouldn't matter because you enjoy that story so much. It's interesting to me. Like, I think I may have mentioned this on the podcast probably a long time ago, but one of my favorite stories is Lost in Space, like that TV show. Love that as a kid.
Couldn't get past
that
that
movie
last
came
season.
out, but well, we're not that far ahead yet. I'm still on
Okay. Sorry.
The TV show from a long time ago, from like the 60s. Like, I loved that as a kid, watching that on whatever I watched it on, probably Nick at Night or something. I love that show. So then that movie came out in the 90s that was god awful, and it was god awful.
Oh, with Matthew LeBlanc. That's right.
Right. I'm sure we talked about this on the podcast before, but it's awful. Like, just bar none, it's awful. I know it's awful, and I love it because I love that story. Same thing with this new TV show. Like, I just love it. I love these characters. I think that's what it is too. It's not just story; it's the characters.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a great character dynamic and a well-written characters, you're gonna like it no matter how it's told, how bad it's told. It doesn't matter. You love those characters. Just like Shameless, I like the UK version so much, and now I like the US version because it's the same characters. And then what made me think about this, Trevor, was you talking about the remake of The Lion King. One of my favorite books series of all time is The Dark Tower by Stephen King, and they came out with probably one of the worst movies ever made, like ever in all of history, a few years ago with McConaughey as the bad guys, Randall Flagg, and it was so bad they condensed all 7 books into an hour-and-a-half movie, which is ridiculous because these books are like thousands of pages long each. But I enjoyed watching. I didn't like it. Like, I thought it was awful and an abomination and everything. But I love the characters so much and the story so much that I just was like, dang it! Why do I like watching these characters in this story, even though it's terrible and I hate it? So yeah, there's power there. So you bring up a very good point, Trevor. Maybe it doesn't matter how good or bad the remake is, even if the story is good. Dang.
It's also just, to your point, the characters, because like we brought up Iron Man, and I know a lot of people were sad when he died in the film.
Oh,
like
some
Robert
people are
Downey
still
Jr.
mad.
is perfectly fine. He's good. He was
Yeah.
portraying a role, and good that he's still alive and functioning really well. But the character is gone, and so I don't think that people would be upset to see more of that character, just because there's an attachment to that character and wanting to see more of him doing stuff. Like that's kind of the sad. That's just human nature of the sadness of ending things.
Sure.
Like we see ends in our lives. That's kind of the tragedy of being human, is the end of various things that you experience. And wanting to go back and be able to not have an end of those stories, that's a powerful way to connect to people.
Yeah, to keep those people that you really cared about, those characters that you grew to love, and have them stick around some more. Sure, of course. Of course you would want that. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
it's like
being
a-
quiet. I feel like we may have done this episode once before, and we're just
okay.
remaking.
This is the remake. No, this
We're
is the
doing
remake of that.
right now.
I didn't want to tell you guys this, but yes, this is the remake of that. That was my whole plan the whole time. That was the plot twist. You found out.
Because right once you brought up the Lost in Space thing, I was like, wait a second.
You're like,
Whoa,
deja
we
vu?
did this.
Is this a glitch in the Matrix? What is that? That was a dark reference, by the way. And a Matrix reference. That's fun.
All in one.
It just
the
makes you
remake of
wonder
that.
if the time component has anything to do with it. Like, if a movie was made in the 50s and you remake it today, is that okay? If it was made in the 80s, is that okay? If it was made in the 2010s, is that too soon? When we did our podcast 2 years ago and we're remaking it now, is that okay because no one listened or remembered the first one?
I feel like we had more listeners back then, though.
You know, they
So
might come
it's
back.
that time contingent, because I think what really sparks this conversation is that we're remaking Harry Potter and we're remaking Moana. Harry Potter and Moana have come out very recently. Moana came out in 2016. Is that a long enough buffer? Because remaking Little Mermaid that came out in 1989 is different than remaking Moana in 2016.
I agree. Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, Disney's ideas that were giving more voices to stories and cultures that don't normally get those stories. Remaking a bunch of our old stuff is very limited because it's a lot of white princesses. As you get more further in time, it's more culturally diverse, and that's what Disney wants to do. They want as many people to appeal to their brand as possible. It just makes logical sense. And it also makes sense to then, you don't have the uproar to be like, oh, we're recasting Moana as a different culture as compared to recasting Ariel.
Yeah, that's very different.
It's a delicate balance. It's like, as a big company, you're trying to appeal to as many people as possible. Not, oh, we're just appealing to this certain group of people. We want everyone to see it.
I think, and sorry, I'm going back with Moana. I think Moana probably would have. I prefer if Moana would have just come up with a sequel rather than a full-on remake, live-action remake. Have a sequel, and then 5 years down the road, then have your remake. I mean, right? 2016 really is just too short of a time.
The remake is interesting because Disney used to release the half editions or the straight to VHS versions.
Yes. Yeah, awful. Yes.
And that's what almost the live action, some of them are, because some are released in theater, but some just go straight to their streaming platform and they don't really make a big deal about it.
Pan and Wendy. I was surprised to see that Peter Pan and Wendy went straight to
That was
Disney
on my notes
Plus.
today.
Of how many
And I had no
times
idea it
they've
came out
remade
already.
Peter Pan.
I
Peter
didn't
Pan's
know
been
either.
remade
One a
like
year.
5 billion times.
It's another Wizard of Oz situation.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
But Peter Pan, I mean, I think they made one called Pan back in like 2002 or 2003, and I thought that was a solid movie. That was a really great retake of the cartoon or of the storyline. It was fantastic, and I loved that one. It got panned by critics, and other people hated it. I thought it was great, but I also loved the original. There you
go. You like the original.
The original, yeah.
So it makes sense.
I don't know. So I'm interested to see this new one, this new Peter Pan.
Yeah, I've heard mixed stuff. We'll see. It's more very, very inclusive, which is good. So you got that going for it. I think it's kind of, I've heard it's rather goofy and kind of like, if you like Baz Luhrmann, like his kind of movies, like the outlandish kind of out there stuff. I don't know how else to describe his movies.
What's funny about
modern
that,
takes.
though, yeah, it's more how we're like, oh, this was bad, this was a bad remake or whatever, but we're confirming that we watched it. Which is pretty funny, no matter how bad it is. But they got us, regardless if it's a remake or not. Like, they already got us.
Yeah.
But that's because a lot of us have the interest. We have the nostalgia for Peter Pan, Little Mermaid,
Well,
Beauty
Peter
and the
Pan's
Beast.
even a further nostalgia. I mean, imagine if you grew up and you went to the theaters when the original came out in 1950 something.
Right.
You know what I mean? Peter Pan being remade as like Hook in 1990 something. That's a different story, but it's kind of a remake. It's still the same horror story.
You would think that it would be fun for those.
Remaking it
folks,
for multiple generations is different. Like, oh, this movie's been remade like every 30 years. And so like every generation has their own version to kind of latch onto as this is their.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like Star Wars. Because if you have the prequel Star Wars, that's when I was a kid and it ruined Star Wars for me. If you have the new sequel Star Wars and you're a generation now, that really only ruined Star Wars for older people. Younger people didn't really have a problem with the new Star Wars at all. It's mainly
honestly,
the older
I didn't
people
have a problem with the new Star Wars either. I'm still curious why people are so upset about it.
I love the first
Star Wars is a different IP entirely.
Yeah, Star Wars is this whole topic on its own.
Yeah, but just to
It's
have
beast.
like multiple generational remakes is different too, because are you remaking the one that came out 20 years ago, or are you remaking the one that came out 50 years ago? Or are you just doing the book and you didn't even acknowledge that the other two remakes happened?
Right. Well, a good example, I think we talked about this on the podcast, I'm sure, was Matilda that came out
Oh my
recently.
god, that did
That
come
I
out
think
recently.
a lot of people were like, why would you remake that film? It was a classic for a lot of kids growing up, was that film. And it's a really well-made film, in my opinion.
30
And then
years
this
ago.
movie came out, right? And everyone's like, oh my God, it's so much fun. But it was like a musical version. So it was a different take. But it's a new generation, though. Like, that's still, probably 20 years after the original, if not more. It's
Yeah.
time. Maybe it is time for a new generation to see that story. Same
I
idea.
will say, I feel like Matilda got overshadowed because Wednesday came out.
Yeah, I think they came out around the same
The
time. which is
remake of
unfortunate.
Wednesday overshadowed the
The
remake of
remake.
Matilda.
Yeah, both musically inspired series. So
Yeah.
didn't really help that, unfortunately. So poor timing. But I like that. I like that idea, Trevor. A generational reboot is sometimes necessary. It's like, here's that story that I enjoyed as a kid. Because some kids might go back and watch. Like, I know you, Trevor, said you didn't really care for the original trilogy as much because of the sound editing and some of the hokiness of it. And I can see kids thinking that way. So why not have them watch Force Awakens and have fun? I know my niece and nephews did. So
But I think
maybe
that
it's not so bad.
I'm glad that they're doing, let's just say with Mandalorian, which is a spin-off of the Star Wars universe, is that they still want to try to capture the essence of having the puppets, having the same
practicality of
type of like mixing the old with the new to keep us olds into it as much as the youngs. You know what I mean?
You're calling old.
Hey man, I found some grays in my beard. I'm there. I can't say
Speaking of
anything
grays.
about you being old anymore.
Oh,
I hurt all the time.
Yeah, getting tired by 9 p.m. It's great, huh?
Oh no, dude. My late nights is staying up with you guys and talking.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's my late night.
Cheers to you.
Is that your Miralax?
Yeah, I'm taking that
Prune
right for a bit.
juice?
Yeah. Yep.
I think the only the gray area, the challenge with remakes is that you're putting. Yeah, no, I know. You're putting the creative resources to remaking that story because, like, Harry Potter is a good example. I love the Harry Potter books. I always will love the Harry Potter books. I was not a fan of the films. If they said they're going to redo the books to be closer to, or redo the movies to be closer to the books, I'm all in. I think that a book that is that long and has that much going on benefits from being a TV show rather than trying to cut all that down to a 2-hour movie. There's a lot of
for
stuff
sure.
that you leave out, and
My favorite
it makes
scenes
it
were not in the
kind of
movies.
confusing. Yeah, and so I'm not a problem with that. I think the problem rises that now I've put in my resources to redoing this when instead we could take that universe and be like, hey, what if we showed Harry's dad when he was in school? And where it's like, it's the same kind of TV show. We're at Hogwarts, but it's not beat for beat what we've already done. You only have so much creative resources when it comes to money and writers and directors and talent. They can only do so many things. So if you've dedicated to this, it pretty much tosses out that story, which isn't fully original, but it at least is nuanced within the universe.
And it was never fleshed out. We only got glimpses of it, so it would be fun
Yeah.
to see what they were up to, what kind of mischief they managed back in the day. Those Marauders. That would have been
So
really fun.
I
Unfortunately,
know, just a show called The Marauders would be amazing, but it's that delicate balance. I think that's what the anger over remakes is. It's not that you're remaking it it's like you're not doing this.
Yeah, that's fair too, right?
It's
You're
an
not
opportunity
doing the other
cost.
story that you could have done. Like, here's a hint at something, another story we haven't told yet, and they're still not going to tell it. It is frustrating. It's frustrating that all those Wizard of Oz books haven't been made into anything yet.
No, we got to keep remaking Dorothy.
Just gotta keep
Showing up.
remaking the
Oh my
same.
god, you're complaining about them making remakes of Wizard of Oz, but then you're complaining that they're not making remakes of Wizard of the Oz.
It's what I do. It's what I'm here for.
Clouds. Ah.
I'm just saying. Yeah, I think that whole thing with WB is kind of what I think tipped us off to even make this episode in the first place, because that was pretty hot in the news recently. Because we're like, it just ended. We swear, and like, no, it's been quite a few years since those films came out. and there's a lot more in those books to do. I personally think that they should wait until after J.K. Rowling dies to make the adaptation. That's just my personal opinion. But they'll do whatever they need to. It's already in the works. They're already setting it up through WB. They made the official announcement, so
Well,
we're getting that as a TV show.
Zemeckis and Bob Gale have both said that the day that we get a Back to the Future remake is when they dead.
Die.
So
yeah,
maybe that's what it takes. Maybe it takes when the original owners of these IPs to die off.
For some people, yeah.
Yeah.
For them, yeah. I know they always said that about Back to the Future, and that's fine. We got Rick and Morty, so.
I just wonder when they're gonna just reboot Fast and the Furious at this point. We need 10 new movies.
We haven't had the new movie come out yet, have we?
We don't need these
Hold
10
on.
same movies. We need 10 fresh Fast and the Furious movies.
Okay.
They should
It's
remake the
time,
original
guys.
Fast and Furious when we can go back to them just driving cars and not doing all the other stuff.
Whatever they're doing.
Oh my
now.
god! In number 10, they get Doc's
Zip lining on helicopters.
They
and-
get Doc's time machine and goes back to the first movie. Don't do it, Dom. Don't do it for
Yeah.
the family. Yeah. That was silly.
Good tie-in. There you go. I like that. That was fun.
Well, I mean, is there anything that you guys would actually want to see remade at this point? I know that, Trevor, you just said the Harry Potter movies would be great because you didn't care for them, but is there anything
Yeah, that one
else
makes the
out
most
there?
sense, I think.
Okay, I'll start just because the new
Okay.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is coming out on my birthday, August 4th. I dig what they're doing. I dig the style. For myself, I would love to see a remake, but with the 90s aesthetic. Give me the 90s look, the dark, gritty 90s look, with the 90s looking turtles modernized. Like,
Would that
rather than
work?
having these cartoony, goofy, like,
Yeah,
bug-eyed...
would that work though? Because like the '90s was very specific the way it felt. The movies felt back then.
No, I know.
movies don't
Make it
feel that
dark
way
and
anymore.
gritty.
But would that work? What I'm saying is, would kids these days like gravitate towards that? Would they want that?
Kids...
Like we wanted that back then, but I don't know if they
We
would
were
today.
kids and we loved it.
But everything else was like that back then. That's my point. All movies kind of had that same gritty look and feel to them.
Was it, though?
They don't today.
Not
Oh
for
yeah, go back
kids.
and watch your movies. Oh yeah. Well, there's a lot of kids movies that are super
there's
dark.
a lot of creepy stuff. Like, I think there's a lot of poppy colors today. Like, it's a lot of bright, flashy colors. I
Very
think
much
it's when you have kids who watch Paw Patrol and just watch a lot of, like, Dora the Explorer, and it's just a lot bright colors. You kind of keep that color palette going. That's why the Illumination movies do so well, because they have that bright color palette.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the 90s definitely has some weird... Like, there's a reason that Mario movie was so creepy. It just fit the time period.
Yeah.
It feels just like it could be connected to the same universe as Ninja Turtles from the 90s.
Interesting. Yeah. All
Oh,
right.
Doug, all those movies look just the same, dude. Garbage Pails Kids movies, Troll. They're all like that.
Okay, I didn't
Dark
watch
and
Garbage
creepy.
Pail Kids or Troll.
Oh, you should. It's a
No.
gem. It's a real gem.
No,
Real
I don't
gem.
need to see it. I'm not going to see it. I mean, unless there's a big voting online for us to watch a really bad movie, and it's
Oh?
going to be Garbage.
I guess we're gonna set that poll up.
Yeah. Let's see one of you guys set up that poll for. Let's see what
I probably
happens.
hmm Anyways,
That means you got to
Yeah, I
get
don't-
on
I-
those
I like that-
fan-dangled thinking devices and type.
but I'm not gonna disagree with you that I personally wouldn't love to see that. I just don't think it would work very well, unfortunately, today. But yeah, I would like that. That would be fun to see that same style nowadays. I don't know if it would work. I don't even know if it would
The
work
only
for me.
reason why I would disagree with that is look at what NECA has done with their collectibles. They've come out with the 90s version of the Turtles, and they sell out like hotcakes. there was a Justice League video game where they had the Turtles in the video game, and people went nuts when the Turtles showed up. Like, and it was the 90s version of the Turtles. Like, nobody's doing that whenever you see, like, the 2000s Turtles where it's the sharp drawings of them. Like, there's something about the 90s Turtles that is so just, it's almost iconic. I don't know. Maybe this is me yelling at clouds saying, don't touch the 90s Turtles. It really is. So
It is, yeah.
I'm wrong here. I'm sorry. I can't.
No, you're not wrong. I think that you're right in that you would like it. And I would like that idea, but I just don't think it would sell. I don't think you would get butts and seats. And to be honest, I don't even know if I would want to watch that. I think I would just rather go back and watch the original movies. That's me.
Pizza Dude's got 30 seconds.
See, it's better. You're not going to be able to recapture that.
No, I know.
You're not going to.
Anyways, the question was, what would you guys remake?
Right. I would probably stick with my go-to that has been my go-to for a while, which is Fly the Navigator. I still want to see that get done. I know it's still on the slate somewhere. We'll see. You know, she keeps making Star Wars episodes, so
that would be fun.
And you could totally modernize that. That's something that could easily be modernized.
Yes, absolutely. For a new generation.
So, an easy one is what Trevor said earlier, sci-fi. Sci-fi is easy to update.
Absolutely.
Great to see.
Yep.
So, that'd be me and my choice.
Trevor. It's really tough because they pretty much remade Star Wars already.
Right.
And they remade Star Trek. I really liked the first one. Before they got all weird.
Yeah, the first Chris Pine one.
The first one, Chris Pine one, was a really good version of Star Trek. And I'm just trying to think of various things, and all I could come up with was Universal tried this, but they did a really bad job to relaunch the original movie monsters from the 30s. Because they got weird with it. But just to have like an actual Dracula that was made today that really looked creepy and scary and was kind of just grounded and gritty, and then have an actual Frankenstein, because like the recent versions of Frankenstein, like there was one in Van Helsing, they're all like super weird. They try to get all technical and stuff. Like make it like the dude was in the 1920s or the late 1800s, try to create something, and it just should look like that, and just make them all in the mid 1800s when they're originally based on, and just be period pieces.
Oh, that'd be a dream come true. I am on board 100% for that.
Because like they made that new Mummy with Tom Cruise, and it was made and set in today's time. I don't want that.
Yeah, you don't want that.
They want period pieces. Like the books are made for a very particular time. It's very Gothic style.
Well,
God, that'd be crazy.
Even the Brendan Fraser Mummy was based in like the 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a swashbuckling adventure.
Right. And that's what made it so much fun.
Yeah, man, I like that idea, Trevor. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people out there that were sad when the Dark Universe, I think that was what they called it, got scrapped. But I think maybe it was a good thing because they can maybe start really from scratch and do it back in the time period that they were written in. Because that would be a lot of fun.
I just think Frankenstein's such a tough one to remake, though.
I think you can still do it, though.
I don't know, because the book, which I read late last year for the first time in my life, the movie is nothing like the book. You couldn't make two different things. It would be like comparing Star Wars to Pride and Prejudice. That's how different the book and the movie are. And so you could go really deep, gritty, and philosophical. Like just the very idea of Frankenstein, it's pretty much just a mind trip. It's just philosophy of what existence means. It's pure and simple as that. And that's why he's not just a monster. He's actually quite intelligent and is really down on why did you bring me into this world, and he hates his creator, which it's a really fun dynamic. But just dark and gritty is a way to go with that.
I agree. So I would love to see that.
Fascinating. So something more on the book adaptation more than a straight
remake in the movie. Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. Cool.
I like it. Well, Hollywood, you have work to do.
I know, because it's funny. This isn't new what Hollywood does, to Alex's point. they've been doing this since movies have existed. They love remaking things, and they also love turning books into movies as quickly as possible. Right now, I'm reading Rebecca, which is a story by Daphne du Maurier, and it came out in 1938. The book. The movie was made by Alfred Hitchcock in 1940. It won Best Picture that year, but that's how quick Alfred Hitchcock, the great master of suspense, is renowned as one of the best directors of all time, turned a book idea into a movie that quick.
Yep.
So it's
been
not
remade
new.
as well, so,
And it was remade in 2020 on Netflix. So they just don't remake Best Pictures. It's not a good idea. If you're going to remake something that's not that good. It's much easier.
See, I love that idea. Remake the ones that are not good too.
But
Maybe it's a good story, but this wasn't made well.
Again, maybe people will watch that and go, "Hey, maybe I should see this Best Picture. Maybe it's better than this." Or they just lose all interest. And
I
move
hate
on with their
this
life.
now.
Yeah, I hate this. I'll never watch it. Good lord.
This has ruined it for me.
Yep.
Delicate balance.
This is a great remake.
So,
episode.
everyone listening, what podcast should we remake next? What topic did you love or hated that we should redo? Because I know episode 1 of our podcast where we talk about the Lego Movie 2, and I refer to Chris Pratt's character as his Jurassic World character rather than his Lego Movie character the entire time. Definitely deserves a remake, but...
Oh no!
I do know the difference between Owen and Emmett now.
Nice.
But to everyone listening, we hope you enjoyed, and we'll talk to you next time.
Frog out.
Adios, y'all.